Manual transmission test 5 is where we're going today. We're talking about some. We're going to talk about some boots and CV joints and everything. All right. Now you're going to hear some terms here that I'm going to let you dig and research. And like I say, whenever you're doing your final exam at the end, Derek, you've been there, haven't you? And so is Sean. It's open book, and you're going to get X number of questions, 50. You know, I used to put 100 questions on my final exams, but I found out when people got to about question number 68, they just start marking answers without, because they get sick of it. I mean, it seemed like that was a universal. Everybody would just get sick of it. And one day I told everybody, I says, every person in here is going to, for this one particular exam, is going to have a different test with not even any of the same questions on it. No two people would have any of the same questions, and it was like a 75-question test. And Ben, that one guy, said, crap. Now, what does that mean? He's upset because he's not able to copy anybody's paper? What's up with that? So, all right, anyway. Huh? Well, you didn't have it? It wasn't in your bin in there when you Just throw it on the floor, You didn't have test 5? Is that what's in there now? You got it? Okay, you got it. All right, flip to that one there. The leading cause of CV joint failure is boot contamination. Now, let me ask you this. Why do we even need a CV joint? Why do we need one? Well, this is a CV axle. All right. Now, what you got going from the rear wheel drive, if it's rear wheel drive like your pickup or whatever, what's going back to the back for the drive shaft? What do you got for a drive shaft? What kind of U-joints you got on your drive shaft? The old cross,
universal joint.
The plain old cross U-joints like that. And so what happens with those? Now, how many of you guys have ever taken a extension with a wiggler and went way down in there with this wiggler, and you're trying to turn it with maybe some kind of a drill or a power tool or something like that? So what happens if you go too sharp with that? It goes, doesn't it? I mean, I'm talking about a plain old U-joint like on your, it's the same thing as what I'm talking about on a drive shaft, like a wiggler that you're putting a socket on, and you're trying to turn a bolt with it. If you get too sharp with it, it gets hard and easy and tries to change angles on you and all that kind of stuff if you try to go too sharp with it. Well, what about an impact wiggler? It's got a ball in it so that it can turn real smoothly. Even though it's at a sharp angle, it's still turning smooth, and it doesn't get fast and slow and hard and easy and all that kind of stuff. That's why they call this a constant velocity joint, because you can turn it really sharp, and it can continue to transmit torque without getting hard and easy and hard and easy and hard and easy like them stupid regular CV joints do. On some of the pickup trucks, like these guys that have the lift kits put on their trucks, they put a lift kit on the truck. That's going to change drive shaft angles drastically, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So what do they do to keep that from being a problem? Anybody know? Anybody do lift kits around here?
Two-piece drive shaft.
Huh? You have to shim the rear end and change they got a wedge-shaped shims that go between the leaf springs and the rear end, so you can change the angle of the rear end, so when the drive shaft is going down to it, it's going straight. I mean, more of a straight angle. If it's too straight, it'll be trouble too. It's got to bend a little bit, all that. So anyway, that's a long and short of that. And that's what a joint, and when they're talking about joint contamination, they're basically talking about this, because it's got some balls and runners in there, and some of you guys have took these apart. Anyway, there's one I had on the floor in there. Okay. Now, let me see. Now, let's see. So, boot contamination would mean what? Now, basically, if the boot is ruptured, it's going to get dirt in there. Now, that's not really boot contamination. You can get dirt all over the boot and it won't hurt anything. But if your boot busts and you get a bunch of dirt and grit and crud in there, it's going to basically act like valve grinding compound and grind the joints away. And then it makes little dimples in the various different places where those balls run. The place where they run the most is going to have little dimples in there. And then when you turn really sharp, you'll hear them going click, 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 click as those balls roll back and forth through them dimples, you see. And that's what makes that clicking noise that you're going to get on CVs. Okay, GI, AAR, and NTP are variations of the Rezepa CV joint. That's false, but like I say, you research that and learn those. I need you to be able to explain them to me. If I hit you with a question out in the shop one day without warning, you need to be able to explain to me about these CV joints. Outer CV joints wear at a faster rate than inner CV joints. That is true. Now, what is the inner CV joint? The inner CV joint does something the outer CV joint doesn't do. The inner CV joint plunges. Why does it need to plunge? Why does the inner CV joint need to plunge? No, whenever the suspension is going up and down, this joint's got to get longer and shorter. Now, what you got on your drive shaft on your pickup truck or your car, you've got a long spline, right? You got a long spline shaft, and it actually, as the geometry changes, and the drivetrain component is mounted to the car, and as the wheels are going up and down, this actually has got to get longer and shorter, doesn't it? Because as that gets long, this has got to come out as that wheel goes down, and it's got to shove back in. So the inner one plunges. The outer one does not. The outer one doesn't plunge; it just turns. You see. So you'll see that whenever you'll get to where you understand that if you see it. But if you see that, it has to be able to do that and keep transmitting torque while it's doing it. Every axle that's hooked to a movable suspension component that's turning has actually got to move in and out because of the difference. Because that thing gets farther away as that wheel goes down, it's getting farther away. As it goes up, it's getting closer. See, it would bind up and cause all kinds of problems if it couldn't plunge. Your drive shaft does that too on your car because your rear axle is going up and down while the transmission's staying solid. That's the kind of stuff that if I don't mention it and don't get you to understand it, I forget to tell you about it. Okay, so that number 3 is true. Outer ones are going to wear faster. Occasionally, you'll see an inner one that'll come apart, and it'll feel really weird, and you'll see the engine trying to move. I've seen that kind of thing happen too when you're, and that's going to be an inner one. Now, most of the time, that little CV axle I just held in my hand down there, you can usually get a CV axle, a rebuilt one from the parts house for like $60. And so, actually taking these things apart and cleaning them, putting new boots on them, you're going to have more labor and irritation and aggravation with that than you really need. And our industry's going in that direction. We don't build a lot of transmissions anymore. We don't actually build a lot of alternators and starters anymore. We don't rebuild CV axles anymore and that kind of thing. We don't rebuild wheel cylinders anymore. Mostly what we do is we just get the part, put it on there, make sure it's done right, that kind of thing. So just remember that. We're actually going to pop a new CV axle on there whenever we need one. And when you get under one and look around, if those CV boots have been intact the whole time that car's been on the road, you usually won't have to replace those CV joints. Usually won't need to. But if the boots are busted, yeah, you will. Now, sometimes you'll see busted boots on something like a Nissan Pathfinder that's 4-wheel drive, and the person that drives it never uses 4-wheel drive, ever. And those aren't doing anything. They're just kind of sitting there. Now, whether you want to replace those or not, or whether they want to have them replaced or not, it's up to them, but it's not unsafe to have busted boots on an axle you're never using, see? So you let the punishment fit the crime. You know what I mean? That's what the deal on that is.
What is them that turn while it's going? Because some of them still turn while it's going.
They do. They're not driving anything. As a matter of fact, Derek, what you could do on those, if somebody says, I'm never going to use my 4-wheel drive again, you could take those out of there. You know? I mean, they're not supporting anything. But, yeah, you got a point. I mean, if you tell them, hey, these are busted, you want to replace them, they say, well, yeah, let's go ahead and put some in there because they don't like for them to be busted, But, yeah, if the hubs are always locked and that part of it's turning and they're slinging grease everywhere, but I have seen people just take them, slam them out of there and just get rid of them, But anyway, it's just what if you want to try to keep the vehicle, a lot of the times you'll have somebody that doesn't have a whole lot of resources that's just using the thing to go from point A to point B, and they don't ever go hunting, they don't ever go in the mud with it, they just drive it on the highway, and if the time your labor and your parts are figured in, all that kind of stuff, you might be spending $300 or $400 of their money they don't really need to spend, Okay, the inner and outer CV joints move in the same way. Well, that's false. I already told you about that. The most common CV joint design is the tripod joint. That's false, too. The inner CV joint is designed to plunge in and out. That's true. I told you about that. And the cross groove CV joint is commonly used on European vehicles in applications where space is limited, and that's true. A cross groove CV joint is one like this one right here. See, that little sucker right there, and it's a limited space. What you mean by that is, see, that one's not very thick. That came off a Volkswagen. And sometimes these little screws will work loose. This is actually right in there at the axle. And the CV shaft, clicks into here with a snap ring on it. And, you can see that just moves around. It actually, amazingly enough, this one can turn real sharp and plunge. So it can do amazing things compared to the rest of them.
So that one is 9.
Yeah, this one right here is a cross groove where space is limited. One time I was driving a Volkswagen Beetle that I had back in, I've owned about, probably 20 Volkswagen Beetles in my time because my dad had a Volkswagen repair shop for years and years. But anyway, I was driving this thing and these 6 little bolts came loose and the CV axle came loose. And it was just, the speedometer's out like a tachometer, because the differentials, the one that ain't got nothing hooked to it's just spinning up a storm. And so it's at night. This is a weird story. I'm going to tell you it's weird. I got under that thing, laying on the ground, and I'm reaching under there trying to feel past those hot muffler and everything to screw those back in with my finger good enough to get to the house. Hello. And, hey, Ethan. All right, tell you what to do. Get in the trunk of my car and you see that big gray box. You know what to do after that. That guy's one of my graduates. All right, and he works at a shop in Andalusia. All right, so now what we got here is I'm laying on the ground screwing, and this highway patrolman stops to see what's going on. And he walks up there. Listen, this is a state trooper. I'm telling you the truth. This is not a lie. I walked up there and he says, what's going on here? And I said, I'm trying to screw these things back in here, and I'm having trouble because it's night, and, I was laying there and had some pretty nice clothes on, too. And he says, I said, I could use a flashlight. He says, I don't have a flashlight. This guy's a state trooper, and he didn't have a flashlight. Come on, man.
I don't believe it.
I didn't believe it either, but he didn't have one. Or if he had one, he was not going to let me use it under that car. Anyway, that's just weird. I don't. And it was a CV joint just like this. I don't know why I thought of that story and decided to tell it. I did. All right. That sounds like I made that up, but it's the truth. I'm laying there. I can tell you. I can take you to the place on the road where that happened. I remember exactly where I was. That had to have been, heck, I don't know, 1974. But maybe in 74 they didn't carry flashlights. I don't know. And so, let's see. It's easier and less costly to use the ball and cage design rather than the spider assembly. That's false. All right, now let's go on with our multiple guess. Which of the following steps is done first when disassembling a Rezepa CV joint? You're going to pull the CV joint boot clamps and get the boot slid back out of your way. Like that. You guys can sort of identify with this because you just did the ones on that white Nissan, right? Willie and Joe and him. Which of the following steps is done last when disassembling a Rezepa CV joint? That's C, the cage. The cage is a little, you've seen that little cage that the ball in?
Oh, silver thing?
Yeah, the little cage that the ball rides in. And I could take that one apart and show you how that works and all that on this particular one. The cage is this part right here. The cage is that part that's actually guiding the balls into their little grooves and all that. All right. Which of the following statements about CV joints is incorrect? A, the outer CV joint is fixed and does not have a capability to plunge. That's correct, isn't it? B, the outer CV joint moves more than 45 degrees to follow the steering range of the front wheels. Is that correct? That's true. All right. A CV joint maintains shaft speed by bisecting the angle of the joint. Now that's false. CV joints use bevel gears to transmit torque, But anyway, all of the following are common symptoms of CV joint wear except what? A, popping or clicking when turning. Anybody that's ever heard one knows that that's true. Chattering noise when backing. That's the one that's false. A clunk when accelerating or decelerating, and then humming or growling sound that changes with vehicle speed. But that's actually going to be a B there. And we've got just a few questions left here. And I'm going to throw that piece of paper in the trash, but I missed it. Which of the following steps is done first when disassembling a Rezepa joint? Listen to that.
D, that we just had.
Mm-hmm.
B.
Yeah. Now, you're going to do the, well, see, this one here has actually got, that's 13. That's going to be a D, yeah. That's right. Which of the following steps is done last? Look at that. We got questions that we're asking twice, aren't we? And this makes it easier for you, isn't it? 14, that's C. Align two cage windows with the grooves in the outer housing. Lift the cage and enter race out of the housing. You understand what that means, right? If you've took one of those apart, you'll know what that's talking about. The two cage windows with the grooves in the inner housing and lift the gauge and inner race out of the housing. If you, like I say, we take them apart and put them back together. That's what Derek and y'all are in driveline, and that's usually when we work on that. When installing wheel bearings, you tighten the spindle nut to what to remove all play?
50 foot-pounds.
You sure that's right? 25 pound-feet. We always say foot-pounds, but the right way to say that is pound-feet. Have you ever heard anybody say pound-feet?
Nope.
Have you ever seen pound-feet in print anywhere?
No.
I can tell you where you can see it. You pick up that $500 split beam snap-on torque wrench out there, and you look at that, it says pound-feet. That's what it says on the wrench. Huh? All data says pound-feet. Now this here says old foot. But mechanics don't say pound-feet, they say foot-pounds. If you say pound-feet, they're going to think you're a dummy, so don't go there. All right. Sealed wheel. Yeah, that's 25. Sealed wheel bearings, that's number 16. A, do not need periodic maintenance. B, are made of heat-treated steel to resist wear. Well, that's like a dumb thing. That's true. C, are permanently lubricated. Or D, all of the above. That's a dog. That's D. A damper is what? A product that removes moisture from a joint. That's funny, isn't it? A damper. That seems like it would. That sounds to me like it would put moisture in the joint if that's the right answer, but it's not. Okay, so there's balance weight fitted around a half shaft. It's actually a balance weight fitted around a half shaft. Have you ever seen these things sticking off these exhaust pipes on these Crown Vics that don't have no reason to be there?
Yeah.
Look like a little rocket launcher or something. That's a damper. It's supposed to keep vibration down. It actually absorbs the vibration and prevents it from going places where you don't want it to be. Now, what we're going to do, and Latanda's car's got this, vibration that you feel in the steering wheel when you put it in reverse and drive. We replaced broke motor mounts on it yesterday. They didn't cost that much, but they were a pain to do, right? All right, so we had to use air hammer and all that kind of mess to drive them out of the thing. But what we're going to do on that one there, when we finally get it back on the lift, we're going to get it up in the air, and listen to this, Derek, because this is important. We're going to loosen everything. The exhaust system, all the mounts, loosen everything up. And we're going to put the engine back and forth in gear and let it rock back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And we're going to let everything find the place where it wants to live. And then we're going to tighten everything back up, and we're going to see if that takes care of the vibration. That doesn't cost much of anything to do. And even on brand new cars, we would get at the dealership sometimes, when the mounts were all bound up and everything, we'd actually have a vibration we didn't like. And we'd loosen all that, and we call it neutralizing everything. Sometimes you neutralize the exhaust system, sometimes you neutralize the mounts and all that. See, so the exhaust system, because we had a fight with it as much as we did, it may be an issue with that. But once we get that, we're going to loosen all that up and let everything find its place. You see, got me? All right. Everybody got everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing today? All right. You, wrench man, you better get your hands dirty today. You got me? All right. I know he will, because yesterday he worked hard, didn't he? Y'all made him turn some bolts. All right. Anything else? What about you, Webb? You know what you're going to be doing? You got 788 worksheets over, don't you? Yeah.